And how you come in contact with YPG, or the fighting in Rojava?
I'm originally from Sturtevant, Wisconsin. Before I actually joined the YPG, the YPG, I was doing logistics, third shift. During that time, the whole situation in Rojava and in Iraq was unfolding. For 2 years, my country really stood by and just watched ISIS grow out of different rebel groups and commit genocide across Syria and then spread into Iraq, and then committing the genocide against the Yazidis, and then finally when Mosul fell and they were killing Christians as they fled Mosul, I said that was it, and I decided to try to get involved some way. I originally found YPG because I found the Assyrians first, but I found the MFS, the Assyriac Military Council, but I found out they were just a smaller part of YPG as a whole, so I ended up joining the YPG. I guess they want me to use this, but so I ended up finding another American who was joining around the same time, and we talked to a man in Bakur. I'm not going to say his name, but he arranged for us to be picked up in Ahmed, and so I saved up my money for 3 weeks and took what I had to buy a one-way plane ticket. This was my first time outside of the United States, by the way, so it was going from staying in my home, doing my regular jobs, to going to the Syrian Civil War. But so we, when the time came, September 20th or September 19th, I flew out of Chicago to Poland, Warsaw, and then got on the plane to Turkey. As I was flying into Istanbul, I think that's when it really got real. It's like, I'm about to go into the Middle East, and there's lots of war over here. And so I got off the plane in Istanbul. They did a pretty thorough background check because I had a one-way plane ticket. I had to pretend to give them a reason, like, why are you coming to the country? I was like, oh, I have a girlfriend here, so I'm just going to come meet her. And then I got on the plane to Ahmed, and that's when it really sunk in. When I got off the plane to Ahmed, and it was my first time, my first night outside of my own country, and I get off the plane, and there's many people sitting around, and one man points with a big beard, points at me and says, "Come here." And I was like, oh, I hope I'm not going to get killed today. But I went with my friend, and he took me to a safe place. And I met his family, and that's the first time I met Kurdish hospitality. They took me in their house. They put me in, the seat of honor. They made me dinner. They gave me a shower, took care of me. Just some of the nicest people you will ever meet. You can't find that, as I've said many times. You cannot find that in America. You cannot find that in Europe. The kind of Kurdish hospitality you get in Rojava, in Bakur, Rojalat, Bashur. So they. You
can use just some meanings of
question. How long time have you been in Rojava? And as I know, you have been even in Shingal. So if you can tell us a little bit, how was the situation for people who living in Shingal and in
Rojava, and even the war between YPG and ISIS, Daesh? Can you speak about a little bit these things?
I guess this isn't working out. I spent 7 months in Rojava and 2 months in Shangal. The second day I actually got to Rojava, I was wounded, and that's when this whole media thing happened after I got wounded, and recruitment started for foreigners to come over. When I healed up, we went to Arja, which is close to Jezza. We spent 3 months fighting there. Then the thing started to happen. Once we got air support after 3 months, that's when we decided to do operations into Shangal and then to Tel Hamis. I'll always remember the original push to break open the corridor to Shangal. It was just out of the blue because they never tell you when or where you're going, and we got taken off of a random guard duty trip to just me and Costa, or Shahid Kamal, the Brit who died. We went to north of Tel Hami's place, and we're prepared on the border to break the siege on Shangal. And we attacked the border for a day until ISIS fled, because the Peshmerga was also attacking from the other end. And then we took the road, and we were the first people to come up into Sinjar. 2 days before we actually broke that open, things that had gotten so bad that 7 kids had died of starvation just that week prior. So things were getting extremely bad in the area, so luckily we broke open the corridor and pushed them back to the south side of Shangal. So when I got to the top of the mountain, which is quite beautiful, by the way, it's unreal, it's a surreal world. It was like a mountain refugee camp. These people were living on twigs for fire and what little goat's milk they could get from the few goats that they had, or what refugee aid would eventually get flown in every now and then. So the situation was really bad, but obviously it improved once we actually broke open the logistical corridor. After that, we went back to Arja for 2 weeks as we were prepared for our unit to be transferred into Shangal. Then I spent 2 months in Shangal with my unit, and that was probably some of the heaviest fighting we had during the entire war. It was a firefight every single night. We lost a lot of good men and women over there. A lot of things could have been done better if we were given proper support, but just operating with what we had, just Kalashnikovs and grenades and some RPGs, we held off attacks every single night, and mortars, 220 millimeter mortars that were being shot at us every single day, around between 30 and 50 across the northern Shangal city line. So it was a very intense time.
You said the fighting in Shangal was maybe most difficult fighting in Rojava in Shangal. And I want that you can speak about a little bit the ideological side of this fighting, because when Daesh taking the control of Mosul in Iraq from Jizire canton, it's like more than 100 kilometers. YPG, the day after they go over to Shingal. If I ask you, if you can say who is YPG, and ideological, the ideology for the people there, because you know also YPG is not just one normal national party. It's like we see here. It's like Christian people, it's Turkmen, it's Arabic, Christian people. That is the difference between this one and and the second question, YPG, because in Europe, after ISIS take the control of Shingal and Mosul, many newspapers, many TV here in Europe, they take in very big picture, showing very big picture of the YPG females fighter in Rojava. But can you speak a little bit the ideology behind this fighting, the women's fighting in the battle? Very long question, but
there is a big difference between the YPG and YPJ and the rest of everyone else fighting in this region. Obviously, YPG doesn't fight for an ethnic group. It doesn't fight for a religion. It fights for a way of life. It fights for humanity. These are the core principles that Sorakapo has been preaching and that they've tried to pass down to those who follow them, and they're trying to promote in this region. Obviously, Chada are fundamentalists. Even Peshmerga, they fight for a paycheck, a lot of these guys. Well, nationalism or for the Kurds. Rojava doesn't have an ethnic group. That's why they chose the name Rojava. They fight for every single person out there. When we go, and it's really evident, because when we go in, most of these men and women don't care if they get shaheed. They know that they have to make the difference because no one else is going to. So you just see an utter fearlessness from these people, and that's why so many people die, is because they're just willing to go in, where a lot of other people, they'll make engagements and then they'll just break off because the fighting gets too intense. It makes a difference, like in Shangal itself, if Peshmerga would sit and not push forward, YPG would push forward. Why? Because we're stubborn. We believe in what we believe, and we have to do it. We have to go through with what we're going to do. Once you're in the area, once you actually see how people fight, you notice the differences. I can't express enough how this movement could change this region for the better. If you look at Bakur, Bashur, Rojava, most of all of them have fundamentalist or have had fundamentalist regimes that have pushed one certain way of life and saying this is the good way of life for this group of people. Like Syria is the Syrian Arab Republic. Turkey is for Turks. Iraq is for Farsi, it's for Arabs. Iran is for the Persians. The Kurds have always been in the middle of this trying to find their own identity, but at the same time, they don't push the YPG or the PKK don't push their own identity. They're trying to push an area, a region for everyone. They're trying to promote secular humanism for everyone so that everyone can live in peace together regardless of your ethnic group, regardless of your religion, that you are a human being and that comes first. What's special about the YPG and that I love about it is not too many places in the Middle East can you see a woman fight, or much less see a woman working in public in the Middle East. A lot of places they'll put them in shops in the back, or you can't go to market. Like if you go to the market in Bashur, you're not going to see a woman, and it's something that this movement's trying to change. They're saying there is no inequality between men and women. You are the same. You are both humans. And again, I come back to that. That's something that I hope can spread, especially in Rojava, because of the way that the last generations have grown up and what they believed in. They were so set into this way of life of what they believe that women a lot of times are just, for men, they're housekeepers. They don't really have an identity. And this changes that. This shows women they have a chance to be something more, to actually be a real person. So a lot of these places that they're suppressed. So that's what and I also admire YPG because not too many times you can go into combat with women and be on the front line fighting. Because even in my own country, the United States Army, you don't see women on the front lines fighting. They keep them in the back, but obviously side by side, either a man or a woman, we fight to the end. So it's a lot different in Rojava.
Like you said, difference between YPG and the other parties or organizations in Rojava, YPG is like for everyone, not just for Kurdish people. But I want to ask you a little bit more, because you have been in Hasaka, if I know right, in Tel Hamis, Abdulaziz, because these places is like maybe more Christian people is living there, some places, and some places is like more Arabic people is living. And my question is, how the people there, for example, when YPG take the control of Tel Hamis, Abdulaziz, or other places, or some places in Hasaka, how the other people, like Arabic people, Assyrian people, Eastern people, when they meet YPG, how is the situation from the beginning and after YPG taking the control from people's side?
From almost all the cities we've went into, I'll start with, I guess, Tel Hamis, because after Shangal we already were on the mountain. The north side of Shangal was vacant when we took it because all the Yazidis had already run. When we went to Tel Hamis, that was the first Arab town that I had personally went into. Most had fled with ISIS because ISIS had told them the Kurds were going to genocide them, and so they all ran with them due to propaganda. But some families stayed behind because those were their farms. They had nothing else. This was for them. They just made sure they didn't have any bombs or weapons and just let them be. They told them where the regional towns were, or they could get help if they needed help with food, where the hospitals were if they needed medical attention, and where they could find the police station. But they let them be. it's your house, you live here, we're not going to do anything to you. This is how it is. When I went into all the Assyrian towns, again, any Assyrian town we already take, the Assyrians already left because the Assyrians were genocided by ISIS. So what Assyrians left were either fighting for either YPG or they were fighting for the Assyrian militia that was loyal to the regime. So we were both of those cooperate in Tel Tamer and in Hasake. So we had been fighting to liberate Rebish, Tel Nasri, and several other villages in the valley around Tel Tamer until we'd taken Abdullah ISIS mountain range. So it was more or less the Assyrians moving back into their houses than them being there when we came there. These are their homes. They reclaim their territory. We're just there to defend it. We don't collect taxes right now or anything. So there was no governance over the property, who owns what. They went off of old regime records as far as who owns which house, but YPG does not at this time collect taxes, so it's more of just move back into your house, try to get your life back, and that's pretty much what's going on right now.
After YPG taking the control of Tel Abyad in Kurdish name Grecipi, it was after Kobani the second biggest fight in Rojava, and it was very good for people there in Rojava and everyone who helped in Rojava. But some country like Saudi Arabian and especially Turkey, they became very in the shock and very angry how YPG can take in the control of Tel Abyad, because as you know, in Tel Abyad, ISIS, Daesh, they take in weapon and all military help, everything from the Turkish side. So it was very a strategical place for YPG and for Daesh. And just after some days, Daesh come in Kobani and killed more than 233 people in Kobani, taking help from the Turkey, and they come from the Turkish side. So I want to ask you how you see in the practice how the Turkey they're helping, how or what other country is behind helping Daesh, Turkey or other country, if you can speak a little bit about them. Yes.
I mean, I've had personal experience with Turkey supporting Daesh. We were west of Serikani, and one of our advances to push to Abdullah ISIS, we had to push west out of Serikani then flank south. Well, on that push west, we were actually while ISIS was fleeing backwards, they were fleeing across the border into Turkey, and we were being shot at by Turkish soldiers covering their retreat out so we couldn't kill them. So I've personally been shot at by Turkish soldiers. It's been really evident throughout the entire push to Grispi. We've had multiple tunnels going under the border to Turkey. All of this attention right now, that negative attention that YPG, PKK is all getting from Turkey has come after Grispi. Why? Because ISIS has one city left that they can draw supplies from Turkey, and we're going after that eventually, and they know that. So now they're trying to get international support to attack us, to put a buffer zone down and block us from going to take this last city so they can keep their supply line to ISIS. Why else, after 4 years of the Syrian civil war, would Turkey now want to come into Syria? Now, why do they want to intervene? Why do they want a buffer zone that goes 90 kilometers south and only in one small area that ISIS owns, which happens to be their last big city, to Turkey? It's to cut us off from going to Afrin, which is on the other side of Aleppo, or just cutting off ISIS, and then we'd work with FSA to seal off the border so ISIS could no longer get any support. As well, over 80 ISIS fighters came across the border into Kobani from Turkey. They couldn't get in any other way. We had the south secured for a very long time. We've pushed them out everywhere in Kobani. We had been fighting for over almost a year around Kobani. There's no way for them to even come from the south. They had to come in over Turkey. That's the only way. They got 3 vehicle bombs through the border and 80 armed men. How does the Turkish military, who goes after us all the time when we're trying to cross the border, miss 80 men and 3 vehicle bombs, which they all have weapons, by the way, coming across the border crossing station? So it's very obvious what's going on. Turkey has a lot they fear. They're trying to put it this way. They believe that if Rojava gets legitimacy or statehood, they want to say statehood, even though Rojava says they're going to remain part of Syria. They believe that Bakur will try to secede into Rojava. So this is what they've been pushing as an agenda to the Turkish people. And so he's using this as a reason to try to start a war, or renew the war with the PKK, or start a war in Rojava against the YPG. Because he feels if he just destroys us, then he doesn't have to worry about the Kurdish problem in his own country. So it's been a lot of blatant support for his proxy armies as he tries to take down the regime, and as well the Kurdish people that are fighting against ISIS.
Because here in Europe, even here in Sweden, Gothenburg, hundreds of young people going and fighting Daesh against the people, against the YPG, against the people there in Rojava or in Syria. How you will give information to newspeople here in Europe or in America? What kind of country is helping Daesh? And how the war is going, who is Daesh, who is this terrorist group, because you have been there, and like you said, you see by yourself how some countries helping, and even here in Europe is like very passive. It's like thousands of people from Germany, from Sweden, from other countries in Europe going by the Turkey and going over Syria. Do you speak to media in Europe, giving information, your experience there, and how we will do that the people in Europe understand this problem better?
I think a lot of nations in Europe and as well around the world try to keep this out of the news because they don't want it to be their problem. You know, it's a horrible thing, but as well in the United States, before there was an American killed, we tried to, as Obama said, it was an Iraqi problem, so we left it to Iraq, which was the wrong course. Because as you see now, because not enough has been done to stop ISIS, now they're in Libya, they're killing people in Libya. Now they just went to Egypt. 100 people were just killed in Egypt. Now they're trying to start war with Israel. And we all know the repercussions that will have. They're trying to spread their influence across the world. They've made attacks into Europe, into Canada. If you turn a blind eye to it, they're going to continue to push this ideology. And unfortunately, there's always going to be some people that will follow this because it'll intrigue them. Unfortunately, that's the state and case of the way it is. This ideology promotes only one way of life, and you must live by that way of life or you must die. This has happened past and before, like with National Socialism. You have to stop it or it's going to continue to grow. As long as you turn a blind eye to this, it's going to continue to happen and get worse. So what I would say to other nations around the world is, it may just be in Rojava in the Middle East right now, but if they get set up enough, they will come to your countries. They've sworn to do this, and they've already done it to a small degree. If they can get the support to do it and the followers to do it, they're going to do it. They use shock tactics from the start, and they're going to continue to do this to the end. Who is supporting ISIS? ISIS itself is main political backer is mostly Turkey because they have the most to gain in the region by the destabilization of Syria, obviously because they're Iranian allies, so Turkey invested a lot of money into ISIS to try to destroy the regime. The rest of it is more of a byproduct. Iraq, they also look at it as an Iranian ally to a degree. So anything that's anti-Iran, Turkey's going to support and put money into. More of the other countries like Qatar and Saudi Arabia, they have groups like Al-Nusra or Southern Front, Al-Sham, Islamic Front, the different other fundamentalist organizations. There's so many of them. There's so many small organizations. They all have different political backers, national backers from around the world. But mostly it's all just trying to get rid of Assad. So it's a mess. And unfortunately, it's probably not going to get better before it gets worse. So unless the NATO and other nations around the world decide to actually put troops in the ground or increase the bombing campaign or start supplying Rojava with their own weapons to do this, and the people who just want to live in peace together as well, this is not going to happen. So hopefully there's political changes by member nations in NATO and the United Nations to do this.
What YPG or people in Rojava, in Syria, in Iraq, in Mesopotamia need, like gun, weapon, and like everything. What should you say to, for example, to European parties, Swedish parties here? Yeah, in this case of problem. That's it.
It's more like what don't we need at the moment. The 4 years of war has taken its toll on Rojava. Everything is minimal: ammunition, weapons, food, especially medicine, or just doctors themselves. We have very low medical staff. In Serikani, which was one of our frontline cities that was larger for 2 years, we have a hospital there that we can only operate one wing because we do not have the medical staff to use the entire hospital. So if it comes down to education, just to get Kurds to Europe or to other places to get them educated in medicine so they can come home and be doctors or be nurses, that's one thing. For volunteers for medical treatments, another. Medicine itself, everything we get is from Doctors Without Borders. That's probably the biggest supplier in the Middle East for countries like this that they don't have this type of availability to get medicine in, especially sophisticated medicine or for surgery. So what little we do get is all voluntarily given freely. So in the long run, for years to come, they're going to need a more stable way to get medicine in, and the only way to do that is through trade, obviously with outside nations. And another way to do that is to put pressure on Bashur or the PDK, the KDP, to open the border in Bashur to Rojava because it's closed. We can't even bring supplies in if we want to across from Iraq. Very, very seldom times they let us if the situation is dire, if we're both fighting ISIS. But normally, right now we have, I think, 29 gun trucks that are sitting in Iraq that we need to bring to Rojava to fight, but the KDP won't let us because they get financial aid from Turkey, and thus because they get financial aid from Turkey, they like to keep them happy because they sell their oil through Turkey, and so they harass us a lot. So the border in Bashur, if they would open that, it would change a lot of things. It would open up a lot of trade, and it would change a lot of lives. So it's just international pressure to bring humanitarian aid, and the normalization of relations between the Kurdish parties is the biggest thing that could help the people of Rojava and the people in the Middle East in that region. They need to understand that this is war and politics are politics, but people are suffering because of those politics. So it needs to come to an end.
To people here in Europa, what can we do here? Like your message to people here.
Like I said before, the biggest thing we can do here is just trying to get the word out and showing support. Whether you're an Assyrian, a Kurd, a Turk, an Arab, a Swede, a German, American, it really doesn't matter. You're a human being. You're a person. You all deserve to live, to believe whatever you want, to live however you want, because it's your human right. And we have to. That's the message that Rojava has been trying to spread. And if we promote that and show, hey, this is what Rojava is. It's not the Kurds fighting for Kurdistan and Syria. They're fighting for an ideology, a movement to change the entire region and to push human rights. And if we promote that, or if someone speaks up against that, or if someone doesn't understand what is really going on, if you just simply take the time to inform them of what the situation really is, it can change minds, and maybe that person will say something that will change someone else's mind, and that person may do something. They may go to help. They may get a doctor to help. They may send financial aid. Who knows? But simply being a representation of the truth of what is going on changes lives. And I actually want to thank you all today for coming to do that.